Hello, and welcome to the Growing Towards God podcast. Here on Growing Towards God, we talk about ways to grow spiritually and hear how God has been working in people's lives. My name is Virginia, and I'm so excited that you are here today. Thank you so much for listening. So now let's get to the good stuff. Welcome back to the Growing Towards God podcast. The last few weeks have been really crazy, busy, and stressful for me dealing with finals, but my semester is officially over, so I'm excited to hop back on here and dive into this. Today, I wanted to talk about idolatry, what it is, and how to be more aware of the things that we idolize. And so I think of idolatry as loving something more than you love and seek God. It doesn't have to be a physical object, but it can be. And sometimes it's often not what you think. There's many things that we give our worship to other than God. And I'm such a victim of this too. Stuff like money, material things, security or stability in a job with, finances. Sometimes that's a deeper issue of trusting if God will provide. But others like popularity, like being liked by people or well received, having a good reputation, your independence, academics, body image, marriage, relationships, career, the list could go on and on. And this is not something that is new. The Israelites had this cycle of seeing God's faithfulness and then choosing to worship things other than Him, even though they knew that God was providing for them and making a way for them and just always looking out for them and guiding them. And so that's what a lot of the Old Testament is about, or a big section of it. It's God delivering the Israelites from their own sinful choices and them still choosing to worship man-made idols and false gods. And God continues to deliver them and free them from their choices because He loves us and wants to be in a relationship with us. And the same is true back then as it is now. So what does it mean then to worship God? I found a couple verses about what it means to love God and how we can kind of think about what we idolize and how we can surrender that to the Lord. And so one verse that kind of came to mind was Matthew 22, verse 37. And I'll read the little section. It's when Jesus is talking about the greatest commandment. So starting in 34, hearing that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, the Pharisees got together. One of them, an expert in the law, tested him with this question. Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied, Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. So verse 37 is the one I want to focus in on. And that's love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. And so I think the mind part is really prevalent here because what we think about and what we strive towards all starts in our mind and with our priorities of who we love the most. And what we love the most is what we're going to give our devotion to and what we're going to worship. And so if that's not God, then it's really easy to put your worth in other things and really worship other worldly things. So that's one verse that I kind of thought of. And the second verse is Matthew 6:24, and it says, No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. And this just shows how idolatry and worshiping other things other than God has been around for a long time. And the contrast between people wanting to serve God, but also wanting to have control and provide for themselves has been around too. And I feel like we see that a lot in our culture now of people really having high career goals. And that's not a bad thing, but when you're doing it because you want to get money so that you can be secure and safe and feel like you're comfortable, then that's when that becomes an idol, I believe. And it's no one is an exception to this verse. You can't love both God and money. And I think I've seen that in my life too, just trying to, work a bunch of jobs, make that cash, and I'm sure some of you kind of relate, but no one's an exception to this. And if your heart isn't in the right place in what you're doing, then it's just not going to be satisfying. And that's something that I've really learned a lot over the past year or so. But yeah, I want to encourage you to give your worship to the Lord. He's the only one that deserves it, and by worshiping him, it's actually good for you. It's not selfish for God to command us to worship him. He does that because he knows that it's good for us. And so I want to leave you with a question of like, what areas of your life are you worshiping something other than God? And you can ask that to God and just ask him to reveal that to you, and then take time to like process through that and like what the deeper issues are. Like, is it you actually want money, or is it that you want to be in control and feel secure and safe? And that's just one example. There's so many more. And I don't know your story and your situation, but I can tell you that worshiping God and loving him first and foremost will get you way farther. And I can tell you that loving God and worshiping him first and foremost is the way to grow in your relationship with him. Sometimes God uses hard things to make us depend on him and trust in him more fully. So yeah, just some thoughts that like came to mind, and I hope that you really take time to think about what are like the top things that you either spend the most time doing or the most time thinking about that are not the Lord, because it might be an idol in your life. And sometimes these come up really subconsciously, and we don't really realize that we're worshiping something or idolizing something other than God until we actually take time to think about it and process it. So this is just a time to do that, and just a reminder that God's always waiting to welcome you back into his arms, and he wants to be on the throne of your life. So process that with him, surrender that. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that. I know it's kind of a quick episode, but I also wanted to give a general update for what this podcast is going to look like this summer. So I feel like I've done a pretty good job of trying to stay on top of this over the semesters, but it does get pretty busy and it is time consuming. So I've decided that I'm going to continue the weekly episodes through May. So I believe that's this week and next week. And then for June and July, I'm going to be releasing episodes every other week and taking August off from releasing episodes before starting back up every week in September. And so I'm doing this so that I can enjoy my summer. And not that I don't enjoy doing this podcast, but it is a lot of work and it is an investment. And it's something I do want to continue doing, and seeing how God just uses this and works through it, because I do believe that he's really called me to do this, and I want to be faithful to that while also trying to have a chill summer and enjoy other areas that God is calling me to be and to dive into also. But I still want to create content and just enjoy summer, and I'll be preparing for the semester and working on season 2 stuff. So I'm going to be taking a break in August. And that's mainly why. But yeah, I'm really excited for this summer and how God's going to continue to use this and reach people. But yeah, thanks so much for your guys' support and your listening. It really means a lot to me. That's really the update. But I hope that you've enjoyed this episode, and yeah, if you'd like to contribute to spreading this podcast, please leave me a review on whatever platform you're listening on and share an episode with a friend. Have a great rest of your day, guys, and I'll catch you next week. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I hope you took something meaningful away from this discussion and know that God loves you so much and desires a personal relationship with you. If you'd like to stay up to date with episodes, follow me on Instagram at Growing Towards God Pod and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. Before I go, I'd like you to take this benediction into your life and let the Lord's goodness empower you today. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Have a great rest of your day, and catch you next time on the Growing Towards God podcast.